Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Rina Shah with us today. We'll chat with her in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Rina Shah is a Washington, D.C.-based geopolitical risk advisor, political strategist, and frequent on-air commentator. She is the founder of Vental Strategic Advisory Group, and with experience as a Capitol Hill senior aide to 2 members of Congress, chief spokesperson for 2 presidential campaigns, and trusted counselor to CEOs, elected officials, and diplomats worldwide, she's been a leading voice on U.S. foreign policy, national security, and center-right principles grounded in the rule of law. She is a senior fellow at the Rainey Center for Inclusive Governance and a senior advisor to Our Republican Legacy. She serves on multiple boards, including the Renew Democracy Initiative, and is co-founder of Women's Public Leadership Network, which she started with Melinda Gates' backing. She was named one of Business Insider's 2020 political strategists to watch for the last election cycle, and she bravely became the first Never Trump RNC delegate in 2016. She appears regularly on CNN, BBC, CBS, MSNOW, NewsNation, and other major news outlets. Rina, welcome into the back room.
Hi, Andy. I'm so happy to be with you.
Likewise. So before we get into all the political craziness, I'd love to start off the conversation by asking you about where you are today with your own politics. I think it helps my audience to know a little bit of background with people. Do you still consider yourself a Republican, correct?
I do, and it's very much a name only. I mean, I'm living up to the whole RINO label because I think it's about the country. It's about where we are in sort of the representative democracy process, where we say we have a multi-party system. We don't. We have a duopoly. And I know the duopoly needs to be correct. And I'm willing to do that work, but I can only do it if I'm doing it from within a party that is the only party I've ever known from the inside. So that's why I stay as a name-only person. Sure, I care about limited government, about fiscal responsibility. I was always with the Republicans on, I would say, the more fiscal issues rather than the social. Over time, we change as humans. We evolve. My stance on termination of pregnancy, so anti-abortion, abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, whatever anybody wants to call it, it's evolved because my family home had a very different set of values than what I think is generally out there in America. And I don't come from some kind of religious fanatical background. I'm just saying I was never a Republican because of the issue of abortion. I think a lot of people find themselves there because of that. I was not one of those people. I always considered it a very private decision. I always felt that the state needed to stay out of it. I always looked at abortion as healthcare because I am surrounded by physicians. I'm now the sister of 2. I'm very proud of both my brother and my sister. I am married to one. I'm the daughter of one. My late father was a surgeon with an incredible background in surgical oncology, primarily in breast cancer. And so you can't grow up with that, seeing that every day, having breast cancer survivors stay in your own home and not think of what women's bodies go through. And unfortunately, that's kind of become the definer of where your politics are.
So you're saying,
yeah.
Let me see if I got this straight. You're saying when it comes to their bodies and their health, people should listen to their doctors, not people like Chuck Grassley.
Oh, dear. Chuck Grassley. That's a name I have to unfortunately deal with, yes.
Or even a little further when you think about just health in general, that we're at the mercy of Robert Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Oz right now, which is terrifying.
I just saw my aunt from Texas, actually, and she's an infectious diseases doctor and knows Anthony Fauci. And she's still doing the work. Oh, and she's over 70, but looks fantastic doing it and wants to be there doing this work, right? What an affront to her and the millions of other American doctors that genuinely have sacrificed their lives. I've seen that sacrifice. I've lived with it.
Absolutely.
It's very hard. And to know that RFK Jr. can just sit up there and spout the nonsense he has. I think there's something out there if people can, with a few keystrokes can figure out. My dad was a polio survivor. So it's especially personal to me. RFK Jr. is not somebody I can support. He's somebody who caught my attention, definitely for the food stuff, the sort of clean living business of sorts that he was running with. But the vaccines, it's a non-starter. So I don't want to engage people like that. I think it's deeply unserious to do so. And I find it personally offensive because my late dad would be here today had he had access to the polio vaccine in the United States in the 40s, and he did not. He was in Africa, in Uganda, where they did not have access. So my life would have been completely different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not only nonsensical and outrageous, but, in the case of RFK Jr., it's dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous what's coming out of this administration right now. But you mentioned something before about the duopoly. To me, what's even scarier is that there is one political party and a cult. I mean, that's our reality.
Yeah.
And then you look at the electorate and what they've accepted, the hardcore MAGA people. It is a cult. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we get out of that just yet, because there's Trump and then there's Trumpism, One might leave sooner than the other.
Let me pull that thread of you saying, sort of reducing it down to that. I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I've been operating for like 2 decades now in the bubble that is Washington, D.C. And I would say it's fine to be reductive. I get accused of doing that on air a lot. I get a lot of hate mail that's like, how reductive of you. In fact, I think it was a Democrat I was on MSNBC with years ago, Ben Rhodes, who maybe I don't want to name check Ben. He's a fine guy. Maybe it was another guy. I don't know. These guys give me a hard time on air because they talk about national security issues and all that like it's this far away thing. I'm like, good on you for your education. I'm somebody that's raised up to appreciate education and deeply respect it if you've made it to some really great elite schools. But the elitism, the talking like, things are so far and away from the common man that they can't understand them. I think that's how we got here. And so I think we need to be reductive about the moment. We need to very plainly say, I'm a Republican because I can do this better from the inside instead of leaving and saying bye-bye. And I'm not dinging anybody that leaves. My good friend Tara Setmayer and I talk about this all the time. And we are the best of friends. And she made the choice to leave. And I made the choice to stay. And we have had no issues in our friendship because of that personal decision she and I made separately, right? It's not like I went and conferred with the elders of the party, like, do I need to do this? I just followed my gut. I just said, I want to be part of political reform in this country, and I can call myself a centrist any day of the week, which I do. I do that a lot. I do cringe sometimes when I see the Chiron on whenever I'm on CNN, or I was just actually on BBC last night and still see Republican strategist, which is a title from a long time ago. Actually, 10 years ago. And so I cringe a little bit because I am just not what the Republican Party of today is. It is a cult. And I do believe it can be broken up, but we need to get reductive about it. We need to plainly tell these people, this is what happens when you allow this to happen. It's like the polio bit I just shared of my personal life. People are shocked to know somebody that is the daughter of a polio survivor. My whole life, I grew up with my dad having one leg shorter than the other. That's like crazy when I sit and think about that. Like, but it was my mom is an incredible woman. My dad was an incredible human, superhuman on top of it, would do 8-hour surgeries and treat it like it was no problem. And in fact would say, you know why this country is so great? We have the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's why dad could do everything until his dying day. Just like other Americans could. Ramps, handles. I mean, we're an incredibly caring, beautiful country, and we're getting away from that when we sort of pledge loyalty to somebody that's just in it for himself, which is Trump.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I was going to say, there's just so much bullshit today. Like, you could look at the simplest of things. You could look at Jeanine Pirro, who's like the U.S. attorney in D.C., and you could listen to her with her, like, if anybody's touching the reflecting pool, they're going to go to 10 years in prison, blah, blah, blah. But, like, people who stormed the Capitol, right? Who beat the shit out of cops, who defecated all over the place, who vandalized, talk about vandalism, vandalized our U.S. Capitol, destroyed property, stole property, made death threats against Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. Like, these people were celebrated, pardoned, and the government is trying to pay them now, right? But, like, God forbid you are standing with your hand in the reflecting pool. So it's like this kind of nonsense that is so partisan, but to your last point, in service to this man-child in the Oval Office that they all have pledged this weak, feckless fealty to. There are a lot of people who just look at all this and say the Republican Party is dead. Do you think it's dead, or do you think it's just really badly broken but that it can get back one day to a place where you can feel like you have a home again.
I like to talk, but I got this most simple answer to that question. It is not so broken that it can't be saved. Mm-hmm. And I'll put it like this. I couldn't have spent 2 decades of my adulthood, professional life in Republican politics, or just in politics in general, politics, policy, government. I couldn't have been in this if I weren't a forever optimist. And so people will accuse me, of course, of being too optimistic, but I've seen it. I've seen what the problem is. And I do believe it can be fixed. And it can be fixed even more so because the other side is ceding ground on certain things, right? So you've got a number of Americans right there in the middle that just with a little bit, toss them a little bit, they'll come to you. And that's what happened in 2020. I started Republican Women for Biden. I was on Republicans for Harris, the coalition, with former members of Congress. I mean, this is all stuff I've seen and felt and lived and can tell you it can be saved. It just needs some serious strategy, direction, dedication. There are those people out there, and I'm part of a group called Our Republican Legacy. And admittedly, the name wasn't the first thing that caught me, but I was into it, and they know that I do these interviews and name check them sometimes. So it was started by a number of former members of Congress. Mike Pence was involved, very involved in the beginning. And then Senator Jack Danforth of Missouri is our main man. And he is now 90. And we wrote an op-ed together in the Wall Street Journal in the fall. We said Republicans ditch MAGA and get back to first principles, essentially. So it just gives me so much happiness to know that at 90, this guy who was a giant of a senator from Missouri, if you talk to people on the Hill who are closer to 90, I guess, they'll tell you Jack Danforth was a good Republican and still is.
Sure.
And people like us, we believe that the party can be saved, but not by backing sycophants like Vance and Rubio in the next chapter.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing that's interesting and concerning at the same time is that you just mentioned somebody who's prominent and vocal and 90. Okay, Donald Trump is 80.
Yeah. That's what's wild.
When you think about okay, what is this country going to be like if that dude lives to be 90 or longer?
Yeah.
Now, as we saw from 2021 to 2025, he didn't go away. In fact, he picked up steam.
Right.
And he served to further destroy our democracy and our institutions and our boundaries and our norms and all that. So one thinks okay, if he does live to be 90, what does this country end up looking like? Because this is not a man who, when he's out of the White House, picks up his golf bag and just disappears like George Bush, right? He needs to be dominating the media, the news narrative every single day, whether he's in office, not in office. He's a sociopath. He's a malignant narcissist, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I concern myself about. But there are so many good Republicans out there that could take the party back. But if they're all sitting around terrified of Donald Trump and waiting for him to go to Mar-a-Lago in the sky, they and the party could be waiting an awfully long time.
That's it. Yeah. And I think from my end, we've got a lot of those people under our banner at Our Republican Legacy that are privately sort of plotting what's next, right? And have been for a long time.
God, I hope
so. Yeah, I mean, right now we're people who are a party we're essentially in exile, right? So what do you do when you're in exile? Just kind of plan your next move whenever the opening comes. I do think there are people who are genuinely scared of Trump, who are Republicans. I've met those people. They're scared of him because of their livelihoods. And those people are actually generally in my age range. So,
and their lives. There are people that literally fear for their lives.
Oh, for sure.
Donald Trump has given out people's addresses and phone numbers, and it's crazy.
In 2016, when I became that first delegate to buck Trump, I got to personally know what that was like. And definitely didn't have help from law enforcement. They just told me, unless they crossed the line, people staked outside my home, people looking up where my husband worked, every detail about me, my parents, everything.
Can you take a step back? Because I was going to ask you about that, because I think it's important you did something really super courageous 10 years ago, which 10 years ago, not a lot of people were doing. And in fact, I think you were the first. And in a very prominent, risky way. Tell us what you did then.
That was very risky. It was so inside baseball. I ran into an indie actress in New York recently, and we were catching up and talking about it. And she said, I said, I never wrote the book. You know, that's my regret. That I've had 3 children, a full career in consulting, and all that. And in these 10 years, I'm proud of myself for having survived and thrived, but I never told the tale properly. And here we are at my 10-year anniversary of this having happened. And I never wrote the book, is all I told her. And she said, this was never a book. This was a screenplay. She said, it's so inside baseball how Paul Manafort was in your life the summer of 2016. Like, she's like, these are the details that you need to walk people through. They have no clue unless you sit that there and tell them, encapsulate it for them in a form that makes sense to them. Because you knew you were a former political operative. So I was this young political operative who had been a foot soldier in the party. I'd done everything right, come up through my local party's executive committee. I was in DC at the time, and DC was pretty liberal. And now I've shifted out to Northern Virginia for my for my spouse and for other reasons. But you know, this is kind of a situation when I look back at how I lived life in 2016. I was just following the steps. This is a situation where I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was just thinking maybe one day I might run for something, but I was very happy being within the DC GOP. I found very level-headed, normie Republicans, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. These were my people. They knew me. They loved me. They were people we had dinner with, my husband and I. They came to my wedding. This was just not a place I thought I could get backstabbed. And I got backstabbed by my own party. I ran to be a delegate to the 2016 convention in February of 2016. There were 160 people who put their names on the ballot for only 32 spots, of which only 16 were full-fledged delegates. I was the number 2 vote getter. And then the guy above me was a Black guy, and his name was Rich Counts. He was a really nice guy. We were both about the same age, I think somewhere near 30. I can't remember how old he was, but we were really proud of the fact that we were super young. We ran for something and we won. And the local party leaders were just very excited. They wanted us to do all this media because they're like, we want to show the Republican Party has diversity. A brown woman and a Black guy are our number 1 and 2 vote getters.
Hey, look, we have one.
Yeah. And not only do we have one, we have 2.
2. Oh my God, it's crazy.
And so it was kind of special. I had given birth, I think, 2 months prior. So I had a 2-month-old at home, and I was on maternity leave, and I was kind of like, okay, I'm running for the first time for myself. I'd served 2 members of Congress, numerous congressional candidates. I was so excited to go to the convention and be on the floor because in 2012, I gone to the Tampa convention and sat in the rafters, like truly could touch the roof. So it was very special. It was an experience where you had to be dedicated to one candidate, and Rubio had won our state primary. This was an official state-sanctioned election. The DC government was involved. And so Juan is a Rubio delegate. I was on his slate. We get ready to go to the convention. And by our party's bylaws, you vote for Rubio on the first ballot, and then you can vote free agent on the second. And my second vote was going to be for Kasich. And obviously Trump had mounted his run. I was one of the people, like my friend Rick Wilson, who always says, I opposed him from the minute I saw him come down that golden escalator. So many of us, I think our stomachs dropped and we were like, is this happening? But I didn't think he was serious enough. And I was deeply disturbed by the type of person he was, because I have enough friends in New York. I have friends whose brothers and families have been stiffed by him on service jobs. I have a friend whose brother installed chandeliers, I think, in one of the Trump properties and never got paid.
Shocker.
Right. And these are working class families. I'm thinking to myself, this guy's a clown. And I remember I talked to my brother and he's like, this guy just got rich off licensing deals, dude. Like
I mean, we can, I always hate to make light of him, but he's such a total fraud that half the country didn't see it. Like, I was screaming from the rooftops about him, and it's like, and so was half the country. Yeah. But there was another half that were like, and then within the system, people lining up to support him and work on his campaign. Like, what is happening here in America? This clown. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I grew up with this dude. Yeah. I still, after 10 years, cannot believe this man is in the seat he's in. I have to literally, am I sleeping? I have to pinch myself. Like, it is unbelievable.
And given your background, like how crazy that he used to make his own calls, his publicity calls with a fake name and a fake accent. Like, that is so deeply unserious. What kind of man does that? That's not a man.
Somebody I've gotten to know. I mean, you mentioned several people before. Rick Wilson is one of them.
Yeah.
George Conway's another. I've gotten to know so many ex-Republicans or Republicans who, like you, might be in name only or are waiting on the sidelines for a new day someday. But number one, I always say that Trump's greatest legacy will be that he brought people together who, under normal circumstances, would never even be talking to each other.
Yeah.
Like, I've had Bill Kristol on my podcast. But George Conway and I, whenever he's on this podcast, we always joke that, like, you watch the news shows or whatever, and people are like, well, why did Trump do that today? And, like, the two of us would be like, because he's a sociopath.
Yeah.
That's it.
We can explain it.
Yeah, that's it. One word. You don't need to have a panel. No panel.
No,
just
no
one
panel.
word. Sociopath with a definition. Show the definition.
Yeah.
Or list the, go online and say, what is a sociopath? And then there's like usually 10 characteristics. Just show that. That explains everything he does, everything he says, and how he doesn't really care about anyone but himself. Yet here we are, right?
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. But I could see that from a mile away. His character. I just hated it. I mean, I liked watching him on The Apprentice. Who wouldn't? But that's a show. Like,
Right.
this is.
But he was a dick on that show. It's
Yeah,
like,
he was actually.
you
To
watch
be
that
honest,
show
he
and
really
you're like,
was.
I used to watch the show religiously. I'll admit
Yeah?
it. Because, he was like a dick. He was a villain. And it was, but like, who wants a dick in the White House?
Right. But I thought that was a character, that he was like playing. Then I realized, no, this is real life. Like, he's a deeply disturbed, unserious person. I don't want him anywhere near Washington. And when I did that, I would say, I started to express those concerns in some print interviews. How can I put it? Okay. So I did it in a couple print interviews, and I started to say, I really think he wants to be a king. I just started to speak my mind. I was like, I'm just going to tell you, my family has escaped a dictator in Uganda on my dad's side, and we lost everything, 3 generations of wealth. Dictators cause intergenerational trauma. I've lived it. I know it. Like, my family's not okay. Extended family wise, they were refugees of the crown. My dad was the only one who was already here in the US for medical school, medical residency. And so he'd always wanted to come to America anyway. But when that happened in Uganda, they had to flee overnight. Everything. They were merchants. They had general stores, 4 of them. And I just think it's kind of like, it's kind of like the wake up everybody needs when they talk to somebody who's been through something, right? I meet people like that all the time. Until they've heard somebody who they know has gone through something, they cannot feel it. So when I tell people, my family has literally survived a dictatorship. My grandfather was taken to a camp, beaten. I mean, only made it out because my eldest aunt's husband was part of the Idi Amin, the dictator's accounting team. Like, people do not get it. And so when I felt that Trump was a wannabe king and a dictator in the making, and sort of express that, people are like, well, maybe you shouldn't say that out loud. I'm like, well, I'll say whatever the heck I want.
And you did it on Fox News, right?
I did. Exactly. It was different until I ended up on national media, said it in an interview. The interview was even supposed to be about that, but Gretchen Carlson bamboozled me, and I will forever, and to this day, I despise that woman because she knew she was surprising me on air, and I was so shocked. And she ruined my career overnight with that one question. I mean, I think it's the most horrible thing you can do to a younger woman. I was just 3 months postpartum at the time of that interview. I didn't have that much going on with my consultancy. I wasn't like making buku bucks. I was just doing like websites and talking points. I didn't come from wealth. And I would just say, I grew up very privileged with great parents, but it rocked my world. Going on Fox News, turning on my phone after, and having the right wing come after me was, to this day, the most painful thing that's ever happened to me. They questioned my career. They questioned my religion. They questioned my ethnicity. They questioned my status. I'm born and raised on U.S. soil. It just was the most hurtful thing, I think, that I still haven't really processed. Like, how could people in this country that I was taught to love by my father and mother, like, told that it was this great American experiment, grew up in an idyllic, lovely, rural Southern West Virginia setting where people were maybe a little curious about my family's religion. We're Jains, if anybody's ever heard of Jainism, and also my mom's Hindu. So, but nobody was ever hateful towards us. So I was so completely gobsmacked by the amount of hate I got, all because I was maybe going to prevent Trump. So me being the first delegate to buck him, really created the Free the Delegates movement. And that could have denied Trump the nomination on the convention floor.
And what was the
why
question
that
you were asked on Fox?
She said, I read somewhere that if your party's nominee is Donald Trump in November, that you would vote for Hillary Clinton. And I said, yeah, I did say that. All because I evoked the name of Hillary Clinton. It felt like evoking her name, it felt like I committed some cardinal sin. That's
Well,
what
I mean,
Republicans
she's having
were like.
sex with babies in the basement of a pizza parlor. I mean, come
mean,
on.
It was. I never really particularly took to Hillary Clinton ever. Like even I love Michelle Obama now. I didn't particularly love her in the White House, but the version of her now, like I'm dying to just listen to every day because she's so real. In later years, Hillary Clinton, I felt was okay, she's fine, but I was never really taken by her. I was taken by maybe the younger Hillary, not the middle Hillary, because she stayed with a guy that was just a liar, and a womanizer. And I felt that she should have left, but I was also a very young girl at the time and didn't understand what women went through when you're a career woman and maybe have this horrible politician who loves himself like Bill Clinton does, doing these terrible things. So I think women in politics, as you just heard from me, it's a very complicated thing, right? And
I would even, not to defend Hillary, but I will just say that marriage is a very complicated thing.
Yes, you said that correctly. And I will say that that's the part that sort of a lot of people who aren't married then and who aren't in the spotlight, we don't get. And so I can't go back and say I didn't like Hillary because she was quiet, but I can also say I just wasn't really for her because I didn't do the deep work that was needed to understand what she wanted for the country.
Right. But you recognized, right, that she would be 1,000 times better than Donald Trump.
100%, because the other choice was so flawed. And so that was the whole calculation. But also, I really liked that she spoke out about Putin. I think I lived in Russia for a summer, and I felt it was the most important thing she was doing. So that kind of drew me in a little bit later. But the whole point was that I was not going to be a problem in the convention. That's what was so interesting. People didn't understand how the rules worked. They thought because I was a delegate in a summer political convention, I was somehow consequential to the general election. And that just also showed me like the level of civic illiteracy we have. That was also shocking. So yeah, that was the question.
I get that. Yeah. It's the ignorance of people. I get that all the time. Like I have posted things like, there's probably going to be 15 Democrats running for president in 2028. Yeah. I really feel like I'm not going to vote for any one of them unless they make a very direct, clear promise to rebuild the East Wing exactly the way it was and knock down the ballroom.
I love it.
I get hate mail like, so you'd rather have a Republican? I'm like, are you stupid? Like, did you read what I said? Like, a chair could win the nomination, and I will vote for the chair over a Republican. Where did I say I would rather have but like people today are so fucking fired up with their own toxicity and stupidity that they don't even read what you say.
Nobody's reading.
Comprehension skills are out the window.
And when I saw that happening, as the notes would come in, I was like, wow, what have I been doing with my career on the Hill? Like I should have been out of these streets doing some education because people don't know how to.
I know that's frightening. It really is. That's the part that really scares me. How little, when you talk about dictator wannabe, I'm sure you recall seeing the same footage that I see of people that were at MAGA rallies and like whether it's Jordan Klepper or somebody, I'd be like, so Donald Trump wants to be a dictator. He said he wants to be a dictator day one. Is that okay? And they'd be like, yeah, well, maybe it's time for a dictator. And you want to look at them. Have you ever read a freaking history book? Do you know what it's like living in a place where you have no more freedom, no more freedom of choice on anything? And that's, I think, really terrifying that people like would actually say, yeah, maybe it's time for a dictator in America.
Isn't that wild?
Wild.
It's, in that Fox interview that started everything for me, the great irony is that Gretchen Carlson and when you get booked on TV, you have a booker reach out to you and they tell you what the topic is, and so that you can be at least a little bit prepared. The irony was that the interview was about the rules, about the RNC rules, about Trump and Reince Priebus, the chair of the Republican National Committee at the time, about them fighting about the rules because Trump wanted to change some rules. And Reince is like, can't do it, buddy. It takes a whole body to change those rules. Got to wait until the convention. Anyways, I was there to explain a very inside baseball process.
Right.
I think that's why my anger for her is even greater because she had a choice. She didn't have to do that to me. And I felt like that bamboozling, though, was the best thing that ever happened to me on another hand when I look at it, because it helped me find the voice I always knew I had. And I always knew I could speak out about the threat to the republic, to the country. The threat is always from inside the house. And I think this is what the founders really, as I've read whatever I've read over time, from a young age, I was really enamored by the American presidency. Actually, one of the books back there is from a college professor I had. I minored in political science. And the year I got that book from him, the title is simply American President, and by Robert de Clerico. He was one of the preeminent experts on the American presidency at that time. And that was in the early 2000s when I went to college. And since that time, I've had the great privilege and honor of having worked and advised on 2 presidential campaigns at the highest level. And so I feel like my life is really like it all came together in the way it was supposed to, even though it's been particularly difficult at times. But I'm lucky to have had a support system. As tough as marriage is, my husband was extremely supportive at the time. He was just really had my back. My father was alive. He did. My mother was, worried. She was very worried. I will say she was worried that Trump was such a powerful man. And he's like, he can kill you, or he can finish you some way. And my mom's an Indian immigrant. She was a lawyer in India. And so that is what she knows. She knows that powerful people can finish you. And I said, no, Mom, there are protections here, and unfortunately, I didn't really get much of those protections. And I don't know that I really needed them. I was hoping Rubio would call. He never called. He knew what was going on. He never called. None of his staff called. There's some people who...
Rubio is like, this is the thing that just enrages me. You look at Rubio, you look at J.D. Vance, you look at Mitt Romney, you look at any of them that have said the most horrible things about Donald Trump. Horrible, calling him Hitler, Ted Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Yet they just line up to... I don't want to be crude, but like to just kiss the ass, forget kiss the ring, kiss the ass. And here you are, a woman of color, right? And you have shown more courage than these wealthy, rich, powerful white people, which is like, when you see this happening still in 2026, given everything we know about this man, he's a convicted felon on 34 counts. He's an adjudicated sexual abuser. He's been accused by 20 plus women of sexual assault. He's in the Epstein files, having been accused of raping and physically harming a 13-year-old girl. I mean, what more do we need to know? And all these people, all these evangelicals, all these people of faith, family values people, just still line up like servile puppy dogs to support the king. How does that make you feel, given the journey you've been on?
Yeah. I think it hurts a lot. I used to say, I would laugh about it, like almost, this is the first time I've ever been asked that question. I think it's such a good question because I know that what I've been doing hasn't centered me. I'd be far more wealthy now. I'd be probably a household name on TV or something. Instead, I've just kind of had to pick up, my marbles and take them home. And it was probably the best thing for me because I have now 3 beautiful children in which I'm pouring myself into. And, I'm a little conservative on the social front, just on the family tradition stuff. I do believe that if we want a better society, it starts at home.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to always be faith-based, but, I'm very secular also, I have to say. And I enjoy the American experience and experiment of having all these different friends with various backgrounds. I remember when my father passed away, I was in such deep pain, as anybody who's gone through loss knows, that you just don't know that you're going to dig yourself out of it. And I still remain the youngest, one of all my friends to lose a parent. And I think at that time I was the youngest of all my friends to lose a parent. And I think it's just kind of been such a hard thing for me to lose my dad, because he's why I really got into politics. He's the one who told me about Kissinger and, Jim Baker, the greats, just really figures that were shaping the world that I was growing up in. That was my dad. And so when I lost my North Star, that was difficult for me. And I would say, hearing from a couple good girlfriends who lost their fathers, but I wasn't particularly close with. One friend lost her dad in the Bosnia Herzegovina war, and that knowing that her father was kidnapped in a faraway land, and she was born there. She goes, at least you got to know your father. Mine was kidnapped in the war. And then I had another friend who just said, thank God you had the father you did. Mine's a total degenerate, cheated on my mom, got remarried twice, all these things, and never helped me a day get to college or anything. And she ended up becoming a very successful oral surgeon. So I think this is kind of the America I know, where our stories shape us. And I just say, shame on Marco Rubio for being the son of a man who worked the back bartender at times, and came from Cuba and raised him up with, I think, probably all the values that shouldn't be what he is right now, which is kissing the ring, all for wealth and power. And the America I know, to just kind of put a bow on it, is one in which you can always rewrite your journey. You can always kind of pick up and thrive. I say to myself, what would I do? Well, since losing my dad, I've had my mom, who doesn't understand American politics at all. She keeps talking about how I'm like, Mom, you've been here 40 some years, 45 years almost. But she knows good leaders when she sees them. She supported Mitt Romney before she supported Barack Obama. She used to praise Robert C. Byrd from our home state of West Virginia for just being a good, he was post-Klan ties at this point. He did a lot for immigrants in West Virginia. And so I think I try to rely on my mom a lot to keep reminding myself, why did our family come here? What am I doing all this for when these people so quickly folded? These people, for the sake of money and power, did that. I keep leaning deeper into my family story to remember my why.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. You've mentioned Marco Rubio a few times. He literally has sold his soul. And it's shameful because he does know better. And he was a pretty decent guy back in the day.
Sure.
Not necessarily my cup of tea as a Democrat, but
decent.
I could sleep at night with Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
But there's going to be an election in 28. He's running, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just like when Kamala Harris kind of lost the campaign, when people kept asking her, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? And she couldn't answer. And in fact, she embraced everything. That question is coming to little Marco.
Right.
If he wants to win, he's going to need to get back the RINOs, the in name only, whatever you guys want to call yourselves, the independents, the moderates. And their question is going to be, we just got out of hell. Yeah. You were part of that. How are you going to be different? And then I suspect you're going to see little Marco go back to the past, where he's going to start shit-talking Trump again.
Uh-huh.
And the big question is going to be, will it be authentic and convincing? And I don't think it will be. I think he can. So people talk about Marco Rubio. They talk about J.D. Vance. Yeah. Why should we put you in the White House now when you were part of this grifting and corruption and sycophancy and all this? Ooh. And so it's a tough gig that they're facing. But I want to ask you about, especially as a family that is deeply rooted in immigration, we've seen so many Supreme Court rulings in the past week and a half. And a lot of them have to do with immigration. But I literally feel like when this interview is over, I have to go to urgent care and get my whiplash treated because the Supreme Court is psychotic. It's literally when I look at their decisions, it's like they're sitting around thinking, we cannot let Donald Trump destroy the Constitution and destroy our democracy. Right. But we could pretty much give him the ability to do anything he wants. And it's well, make up your minds, guys. On tariffs, no. Birthright citizenship, which is breaking news today, no. But then, fire any independent regulator you want from now on and make it easy to even go back and try to fire Lisa Cook again and control the Fed. The FTC ruling is upsetting 90 years of precedent. Do they want to rein him in, or are they paving the way for him to be the dictator that he fantasizes about?
Ooh, I think that's going to be the question we talk about all through the summer. These decisions coming down, telling us what the court cares about or what the court thinks its role is in the year 2026, right? I think that's what this is all about. Is this court independent? Do we truly have an independent judiciary? And that's what I see is trying to be exhibited here by, again, these conservatives on the court. They are trying to at least appear independent if they could. The tariffs case was particularly important to me because I was on an amicus brief as part of that. That to me was, a decision that was no brainer. Birthright, also no brainer. 14th Amendment stuff here. What are we doing? I mean, any conservatives I talked to about why they were supporting Trump ending birthright citizenship, they were like, well, there are Chinese coming and staying in California for a long time and having anchor babies. I'm like, I'm sure it's happening. I know it's happening, but I don't know that it's happening at the rate at which you're telling me it is. You know what I mean? So that's going to happen anytime. I mean, government can't fix and solve for everything. I mean, that's I think part of the problem. A lot of people are not kind of cognizant of like, what is the role of a federal government?
But this gets us back to January 6th.
Yeah.
It's like, did you see what happened that day? It wasn't immigrants. It was people born here, white people, right?
Your neighbor.
and you had no problem with any of that. Like I said, you pardoned them. You called them peaceful people who were, there was a day of love and respect for the cops, patriots, right? And you pardon them and you want to give them money. So that's okay. But like a few rando Chinese babies that are born in this country, that's
too much for you.
Yeah, that's too much for you. I mean, we're living in an upside down world. But, I think the tariff case is not what we're going to remember this 2026 court for. The birthright citizenship is not what we're going to remember this court for. This court is going to be remembered first by the immunity ruling and then the expansion of executive power that we saw this week in some of the rulings. And because that's what's going to be lasting, the expansion of presidential power. And we could argue whether or not anyone's really going to abuse it the same way Trump is. Like, if there's a Democrat president, are they going to, fire anyone they want? I don't see that happening. I don't even see a moderate Republican doing that. So I do think the real risk is what Trump can do with it. But still, that I think is going to be the Roberts Court legacy, this crazy, dangerous expansion of executive power.
I was going to say that's the biggest piece of the legacy because it is the most dangerous when you allow one person to go so far from what I think the Constitution allows. And we already know that for years, presidents of different parties, Democrat, Republican, have been using, they've been governing by executive order, which is problematic in and of itself. Now, that's human nature. You see somebody else do it, you want to do it that way. I think that's a very different thing than overreaching, which is what Trump has done every day of the week since he's come back. And I think he does it because he knows he can, and that he doesn't believe the checks will work because of how he wanted to get his justices, right? So this is the moment that I think is actually so ripe for change. When we talk about, well, it's not just Trump allowing himself the ability to do certain things, it's a court backing it up. And the way the founders decided this country should be, here we are in our 250th week, the founders said they wanted checks on one another, so not one branch could get too powerful to overstep the other one. I made my entire career in the legislative branch before I came out to the private sector, and I will say that the dereliction of duty by Congress now is so disturbing to me. The fact that these guys have just said we are not going to touch that. War powers, man. You guys, like I want to scream whenever I think about some of the conversations I've had. I had a conversation with a member of Congress, Republican from a southern state about 3 months ago. And he was just maybe it was longer than 3 months. Yeah, it was 3 months. No, longer than 3 months ago, because we were right around the start of the February 28th bombing. So of Iran. So I was just going to say that basically I asked him straight up, when are you guys gonna check him? Well, and this guy was a veteran as well. I think he was a reservist or something. But point is that he should have been able to say to me that, you know what, you're right. And I think we need to get it on the docket. But instead he was like, yeah, he's kind of allowed to do whatever he wants to do for the next, I think he said 100 days. And I kind of looked at him like, are you sure about this? Are you sure that you want to basically give up your duty? Giving up your duty is the most ridiculous thing you could do. you're a seated member of Congress. It's like he was confused. He didn't know what to tell me because I know I caught
But this is a Congress. Like one day they vote for a war powers resolution, the next day Daddy screams at them, and then they do the opposite. They vote against it. Like they are so terrified of him, and he knows that. So they just whatever it is he wants.
Do you see? I offer that vignette to you to show that like some of them just don't care. They don't care.
Well, that's true for sure. They don't care.
Like I think and I was like, I was asking him because I was like, you're a military man. Like, shouldn't you care? We're sending young boys to die and women, sorry. But like, I come from a place like that where a lot of people do go on to the military after high school because that is kind of their best bet. Then they go to college or, whatever. And I just kind of felt I got this air of like, he's above it. He's living this nice golden life.
I think they've seen what he's done in the past on a personal nature, which causes them great physical risk to themselves and their families. When you think about a president like Lyndon Johnson, he was known as the great arm twister. He would get on the phone and be like, I need your vote. And if you don't give me that vote, you're not going to have my support when you need it, blah, blah, blah. That's like normal shit.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced Trump, when he needs a vote, that he doesn't call up and say, look, you want your address all over the internet? You want the Proud Boys showing up at your house in the middle of the night? Like, you see how he treats a reporter when they upset him on national TV. His blood boils. Imagine and we know he's a screamer. We've heard it from all kinds. I've had Stephanie Grisham on this podcast. Imagine what he says to someone on the phone when he feels he's being betrayed and they are not loyal to him. He's not doing a Johnson. He's not being like, well, when you need me, I won't be around. Like I'm telling you, I believe these people, they're terrified for their safety and the safety of their family because he's because here we go again. It's bringing it back because he's a sociopath. There we go.
One word only.
That's it.
I was thinking about how I must have, because you and I have known of each other for a long time, I think. But I was thinking like how I first knew of you. And I do think it was because I was like, this guy's a New Yorker, like screaming from the rooftops about how terrible Trump is. Like people should listen to him. Like I'm listening to you, and it didn't matter to me that you were a Democrat. I think it's a humanity thing,
I try to be logical. Like the other day I posted something on Twitter and Threads, and I said, I just want to ask MAGA women something, okay? Just hear me out for a second. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors all come to you and tell you that they, with their own eyes, have seen your husband or your boyfriend repeatedly cheating on you. He then comes home later. You confront him. He says they're all lying, every one of them, and that it's a big, giant, fat conspiracy against him. And in fact, instead of cheating, he's been out shopping for gifts for you. Do you believe him when he says everyone you know in your life who has seen me cheat is lying? Mm-hmm. Of course not. You dump this guy in a second.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where's that logic when it comes to Donald Trump? Everyone in the world, they all can't be lying. But that's where we're at. So I try to take it out of politics and just put it in their everyday life.
Yeah. No, I think it's like, it's one of those things where I'm looking at this situation where how do we move on after November? I don't know what happens after November if we don't get the Republicans facing the record losses that they should face for not doing what the American people need. Mm. Like we had all this opportunity this past year. And I say we still with the Republicans because, like I said, I regularly fraternize with members of Congress just to get in their heads. And, I try not to do it too out in the open because I think some conversations are better and you can get to a person's heart and, see what makes them tick if you just say, hey, let's have a lunch or, whatever and keep it really chill. And no need to talk about, I never really bring up the past anymore. What's the point? Everybody kind of knows what happened in Washington. But I think a lot of people admire that I'm still around. And I think I remain encouraged by that. I feel I've earned that because I'm showing up to tell people that, that the system we have is so fragile. And if we don't have people politically participate, we are in for it. I mean, already we do not have the levels of political participation we need in the country.
Yeah. Well, this is a great,
so worried.
This is a great segue to my last question.
Yeah.
When are you running for Congress?
Oh gosh. You think I would be part of that? That clown show?
You'd be a great
That's what I
candidate. I
Thank
think, when you look at the journey you've been on for 10 years, everything is timing, right? You look at
Yes,
Richard
yeah.
Nixon's political career. He got humiliated in 1960, right?
Yeah.
Comes back in 68, wins in a landslide, wins in 72. I mean, he did other things that he shouldn't have done, which will be his legacy forever. But times change, people change. And
Yeah.
I think the country really
Me
is
too.
ready for people who aren't wearing labels. They're just like, I believe in this, I believe in that, but I believe that we all believe in the same things. I think
Yeah.
you'd be a great candidate. And here's my other suggestion. It's not a book.
Okay.
It's not a screenplay.
Okay.
It's a documentary. It's a
Ooh.
documentary about you, and the through line is your 2028 campaign for Congress.
Oh my goodness, Andy.
And the big climax is you winning the election. That's the end of the film.
I love the
about
way
it.
your brain works.
Think about
I'm
it.
going to leave it at that.
Alrighty.
That is so good. Okay. Well, when it happens, then I'll have all the credit go to you, my friend.
There you go. Rina, thanks so much for coming on and being generous with your time, and do come back and chat with us again.
Sure. I'm happy to. Thank you so much for having me here.
Alrighty, take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.